works, and it is very similar to how we apply any quality model, say for CMM or CMMI or ISO or whatever. So now let's talk very quickly about the assessment process. Basically, the questions asked during the assessment process are based on the key areas discussion, and based on the questions, the assessment team will take decisions about the key areas based on the responses received from the testing organization, and then the results of each of the key areas will be collated to finally achieve at the assessment result. So the final assessment result will look something like this. So you can see, say for example, in the test strategy, the particular organization has achieved level A, and in the key area number 2, that is life cycle model, it has achieved level B, and so on. So basically, after looking at the actual scores against each of the key areas, one can determine at what level of TPA overall he is. It could be either controlled, efficient, or optimizing. So this is a screenshot of a sample key area, that is a test strategy, that is the first key area. And you can also look at the checkpoints, that is 1A1 and 1A2. These are the checkpoints prescribed by the TPA model. And you can also look at the typical questions which are put forth by the assessment team to assess whether the organization is satisfying the particular checkpoint. And this is a sample scoring sheet where you can see the ratings, that is marked by X, which means the particular level has been satisfied. And there are similar other notations for being not satisfied or not applicable or partially satisfied. So this is how the scoring looks like. It may be either X or Y or blank. This is a sample of a scoring sheet of a particular organization. And this model has been written by two gentlemen by name Tim Kuman and Martin Paul in the year 1999. So now we will get into the details of the process areas. So let's start with the first process area. Before I get into the process area, let me once again talk about the structure of each process area or the key area. So basically there are different levels, as you can see here: level A, level B, level C, and level D. And under each level there are a list of checkpoints. So if I am targeting level A of the test strategy key area, I am supposed to satisfy the first 4 checkpoints which I am highlighting now. So this is how the key areas are structured. Now let us look into the summary of what each key area requires. So test strategy is something which addresses the question that whether we are testing the software based on the risk that the software proposes to the user organization, or are we testing this all the software modules or all the software packages in a certain way which does not relate to the risk which is being imposed by the software on the user organization. So essentially we define the test strategy considering the risks associated with the given software. So at the end of determination of the test strategy, we have identified how important it is to detect the defects and for each feature of the software, how much will be tested, how much effort will be spent on a particular feature, which will vary depending on the criticality of the feature. And also, we would have defined how cheaply it is possible to arrive at the defects, to unearth the defects at the early stage of the software testing process. So this is a summary of the key area test strategy. So once again, talking about test strategy, it is nothing but deploying the practice of risk-based testing. So I will leave the screen for a minute so that you can read through the requirements or the summary of the test strategy key area. So as you can see here, the ultimate aim of the test strategy is to find the most important or key defects as early as and as cheaply as possible. So it says which requirements and which products are to be covered, how they are going to be covered, and how they are structured throughout the project schedule, which means which testing will be done first, which testing will be done second, how much effort will be spent on a particular phase of testing, which is all based on the risk associated with the different features of the software. So let me move on to the next key area, which is life cycle model. So essentially what this key area talks about is the different phases of software testing has to be recognized and demarcated. So the typical test phases are planning, preparation, test specifications, execution, and completion. So when one is able to distinguish clearly between these phases, then you can say that he is compliant to the life cycle model of the testing process. So why this segregation has to be made distinctive and clear? Because then everyone associated with the testing process will have a clear picture on what has been planned and what is the progress against the plan, how much will be tested, how much effort will be spent in a particular phase, and what stage exactly the testing people are working on. It could be, they could be in the planning phase, or they could be in the execution phase, or they could be in the completion phase. So basically this adds to the visibility of the software testing process to the stakeholders outside the testing process, as well as it makes the job of the software test manager to plan and control the testing process in a structured manner. So now I'm going to the next key area, which is moment of involvement. So moment of involvement, essentially it says that the test team has to get involved into the software development lifecycle as early as possible. And the intention of getting involved early is that testing activities can be well estimated, well planned, and well prepared. And also the influence of the test team or the advice of the test team is taken into consideration even during the software development lifecycle phases, say for example the planning phase or the design phase or the development phase. So ultimately, if you see, for example, the testing organization is getting involved in the requirements phase of the development lifecycle, then the testing organization verifies whether the requirements are testable, and if not, it provides the advice to the development team as early as possible so that the development team does not get into the job of any rework in any of its phases. So ultimately, the moment of involvement prescribed is as early as possible in the software development lifecycle. And the overall objective of prescribing such a amount of involvement is to optimize the entire software development lifecycle process and not only the software testing process. So many of the key areas in TPI model have been designed taking into consideration the objective of optimizing the entire software development lifecycle and not just software testing. So then I move on to the next key area, which is estimation and planning. So here it prescribes that the test activities have to be estimated with respect to the effort that it is going to consume, and a plan has to be prepared for testing. The plan typically contains the schedule part and the resources part. Now, what is important is estimating the required number of resources as accurately as possible. So this can be achieved by a structured way of test estimation. By structured way, we could say that the test estimation has to be based on past data, and there should be a common unit of size of testing, which could be, say for example, the number of test cases or the number of lines of code tested. And using the same size measure, when a new project is estimated based on the past data, the accuracy of estimation increases. Hence, the accuracy of planning increases, and hence one does not experience any surprise during the entire life cycle, and the resources which are deployed in the testing activities are as close to the ones which are ideally required. It's neither more nor less. So even if the number of resources is more, then people don't have enough work, they get demotivated. And if the number of resources allocated is less than what is actually required, then the testing activity overruns the schedule, and ultimately it creates a problem to the overall software project and the delivery of the quality software on time. So this is essentially the summary of what estimating and planning key area requires. Now coming to the next key area, which is test specifications. Test specifications are nothing but test cases, which is the term that we use frequently. So what is being advised in this process area is the test specifications have to be developed by using formal test specification techniques. Say for example, techniques like boundary value analysis or equivalence partitioning and so on. Why is it that the test specification techniques have to be used? The answer is simple. If a particular requirement or a test basis is given to two different testers, normally they would come up with two different set of test cases. It is based on the individual's experience, expertise and domain knowledge. However, when one team uses a test specification technique, then the number of test cases and the description of the test cases remain the same, even if 2 or 3 different testers are asked to derive the test cases using test specification techniques. So this is essentially the core requirement of the test specification key area. If we have to summarize that, it says the test cases derivation or the test specifications derivation has to be based on formal techniques to ensure the predictability and uniformity of the test specification process. The next key area is about static test techniques. Static test technique actually means testing the software without actually executing it. So in this method, different ways and methods are used to determine the quality of the methods, techniques used for software development. So if I am a test engineer, I am going to apply static test techniques to evaluate a particular software. I will not actually run the software and execute my test cases. Rather, I will look into the design, look into the implementation, look into the requirements, look into the integration, and I will comment about different methods, techniques used to implement different functionalities. So essentially, I will be able to find out the defects much earlier in the life cycle, and the cost of finding defects is very less because here we don't actually run the test cases, so a test environment is not required, test cases are not required, no effort is required to execute the test cases. So all this effort and time gets saved by applying static test techniques. The next key area is about metrics. People who are exposed to metrics in the software development lifecycle might know the importance of metrics. Here it is suggested that metrics have to be defined and reported with respect to the software testing process. So typically the software testing metrics would talk about the progress of software testing and the status of the quality of the software product. Say for example, one of the metric might say that software testing is taking more effort than what was actually estimated. Software testing is getting delayed by so many days, or it would quantify the quality of the product. It would say that we have identified 500 defects in a code size of 1 lakh, or it would say that we have completed 10% of the total testing and we have identified 200 defects. So essentially these metrics relate to the quality of the product being tested. So the next key area is about test automation. So many of the testing professionals will be excited and interested about test automation. From a model perspective, the TPI model recommends the use of test automation for the reason that there can be a good improvement in terms of the effort required for testing. Also, it can reduce the monotony of the test cases execution activity. The testers are not being made to execute the same test cases again and again and again. And also the execution of tests becomes free of errors because there is no manual intervention involved in the execution of test cases. So these are the typical advantages of deploying test automation. So the TPI model acknowledges that the tools used for test automation provide a definite advantage, and hence it recommends the test organization to explore the possibility of automation and deploy automation wherever possible. However, if you get into the details of the checkpoints of this test automation key area, there will be some interesting inputs like how to decide whether to go for test automation or not, when to go for test automation, what should be the criteria for identifying and concluding on the test automation tools to be used, how much of test has to be automated, how to calculate the ROI of the test automation, and so on. So it will be a good read if you could get into the checkpoints of test automation. I would do that in the end if time permits me. The next key is test environment. Test environment means the setup which is used to execute the test cases. The underlying principle recommended by TPA is that the test environment must be as close as possible to the actual environment in which the software will be deployed or used. So typically, test environment includes the hardware used, software used, and the means of communication between hardware and software and different software packages, and the facilities for building and executing test files, and the procedures used for testing. So these are the typical elements of a test environment. So the model recommends that the test environment has to be as close as possible to the live environment. Also, it says that by ensuring a proper test environment, one can derive a lot of improvement in the test effort that is required, and also it achieves a good quality of the testing output. So these are the advantages one would get by setting up a test environment as prescribed by the TPA model. The next key area is about office environment. Office environment means the availability of various resources like a computer, sufficient lighting in the office, a table, a chair, and so on and so forth. And has to be ensured so that the overall test process is of good quality. So what is interesting here to note is the TPA, low table, availability of a chair, the temperature maintained in the office, and all those things. So typically, if you had looked at the other process improvement models, as I had mentioned earlier, the TPA model gets into day-to-day activities. So this is one fine example of how TPA model talks about even the lowest level of activities or the tiniest level of activities which are typically considered not important among the testing community as well as the development community. So then we move on to the next key area, which is commitment and motivation. So this particular key area is about the soft part of the testing organization. As the name suggests, this key area recommends that the testing organization has to be committed and motivated to perform the required tests. So the motivation comes from the culture that exists in the overall organization. Some organizations consider testing as an unnecessary activity and overhead, while mature organizations consider testing as an important activity and one which helps to achieve the overall success in the software development process. When such a mature environment exists, the testing staff are committed and motivated to achieve their objectives. So the model here relates these soft aspects to the overall quality of the testing process. It says that one has to take care of these soft aspects also, since it has a direct impact on the overall quality of the testing process. By saying overall quality of the testing process, I mean the cost, effort, time spent on software testing should be as low as possible, while the number of defects unearthed, the number of important defects unearthed should be as high as possible. So essentially, these two soft aspects are related to the overall quality of the software testing process. Next key area is test functions and training. Here the model says that within the test functions, multiple skill sets are required. It does not suffice that the test engineers have very good knowledge in the software testing domain. It says people should be from multiple disciplines, functions, and some of them have to be experts in the given domain. Some of them should have very good knowledge about the product which is being developed. Some of them should have very good soft skills. So mix of all these skill sets ensures that the test function is in general successful, and it also acknowledges the fact that such a required level of diversity in skill sets and the required mix can be achieved by regularly training the staff. So that is what is recommended by this particular key area. In summary, it specifies the diverse requirements of skill sets within the test organization, and it says the training needs have to be identified based on the required skill sets, and the training has to be imparted. The next key area is scope of methodology. By the word methodology, we mean the activities, procedures, and techniques used for performing software testing. So the model says that the methodology used should neither be too generic nor be too specific to the given project. When the methodology is very generic, it so happens that every time it has to be tailored, and a lot of effort has to be put down in tailoring the generic methodology to suit a given project. And this effort has to be spent for each and every new project. While it recommends that the software testing methodology has to be specific, it mentions that an optimal level of genericness and specificness has to be ensured so that it is neither generic nor too specific. When the software methodology, testing methodology is too specific, it becomes unusable for a new project, or in fact for any of the new projects which the organization executes in the future. So to ensure basically that the test methodology is reusable to a certain extent, it says that it has to neither be too generic nor be too specific. Now the next key area is communication. Here the model says that very good communication between the test team and outside the test team with the other stakeholders like the development team, the users, the customers, the suppliers, the project manager, has to be very effective to ensure that the overall testing is effective and optimal. So it says that by using effective testing communication framework, the overall quality of the test process can be improved, which again means that the effort, time and cost spent on testing is as low as possible and the quality of the testing is as high as possible. It also says that different modes of communication has to be used depending on the given scenario. So in some cases, the communication method and the communication mode used within the test team might be different, and the communication mode and the method used between the test team and the other stakeholders is different. So one cannot take it for granted that the same communication method and mode will be optimal for both internal and external communications. That is in essence the requirement of the communication key area. The next key area is about reporting. Here the model says that test reporting is extremely important, and it is so important that it is even more a critical activity than actual testing itself or actually finding out the defects. So the test reporting is considered very important because it means a lot for the development team, the project manager, the customer, the users, the suppliers and other stakeholders. It talks a lot about the quality of the product. So the reporting has to be very crisp, effective and communicate what the test team wants to communicate in a very simple manner. Also, it should ensure that the test results are interpreted in a similar fashion by all stakeholders, and hence there should not be any room for misinterpretation. And it also recommends periodic reporting of the test results, because just by communicating at the end of the project, it becomes too late for the development team to act upon it, and hence ultimately the project gets delayed. So as I was saying earlier, even here the model you can see is placing emphasis on improving the overall software development life cycle beyond the software testing life cycle, and ensures the success of the overall software development project, not just testing. The next key area is defect management. The model says that the defect management practice, though may not be fully performed by the testing team, the defect management practice has to be transparent, effective, structured and optimal. So using the defect management practices, The model says the test team can get an idea of the quality of the product by analyzing the trends which can be generated out of the defect management system. So such an analysis and a conclusion can be drawn only if the project follows a structured and transparent defect management system. Say for example, some of you might have heard about data on demand or defining the report which I want. So some project manager might want the defect management data in a particular fashion. Say for example, he wants the data to reflect the criticality of the defects found. Somebody else might be interested in the defects found with respect to various features and so on and so forth. So basically the defect management key area recommends that the reporting mechanism should be so flexible, and it can be flexible only if the defect management system itself is disciplined, structured and in order. Moving on to test fare management. First let me address what test fare is all about. Test fare mentions the intermediate and final products of the testing team. So what are these products typically? It is the test plan, the test specification, the test schedule, the test cases, the test results, the test reports, the test scripts, and so on. So the model recommends that these test van have to be archived for future use, and this test van has to be managed effectively so that the organization gets the benefit, complete benefit of reusing the test effort that has been spent in the previous project. So the typical myth I have seen among the testing community is that test fare refers only to the test scripts or maximum up to the level of test cases. But the reality is test fare means all the deliverables of the testing team, which I had listed earlier. So each of this deliverable has a potential possibility of being reused in future products, and hence the effort spent on future products is optimized. The 18th process area is test process management. Here the model says that one has to recognize the importance of having a structured test process, and it recommends that ultimately the PDCA cycle or the Deming cycle principle has to be used to improve the test process. For those of you who might not be aware of PDCA, it is plan, do, check and act cycle. One has to plan for what he needs to achieve as a testing guy in the project. Then he has to implement his plan or deploy his plan. Say for example, he has to execute the test cases or he has to run the test scripts and so on. Then checking. Then he has to see whether he is able to achieve the required results using the actions that he has planned. And in case if he has not been able to achieve the required results, then he has to relook at his plans and objectives, which is typically covered by the act phase. So the model prescribes the use of PDCA philosophy for the software testing process. So this in essence what means is the organization should recognize and appreciate the importance of test process and hence test process management. In other words, one can say that like the software development process is recognized and various models are being applied to improve the development process, the software testing process should also be recognized and the respective models, say for example TPI or TMMI or whatever, have to be applied to continuously improve the test process. The next key area is evaluation. Evaluation in normal terms refers to nothing but reviews. So the model prescribes that evaluation is far cheaper method than testing because it is able to uncover the defects very early in the life cycle and it consumes very less effort and cost when compared to the software testing activity. So early defect detection is the essence of this process area. Typically it is executed by inspection or fag end inspection, which is typically used in the IT industry. So this fag end inspection or evaluation has to be performed on all possible software development products, starting from the requirements, design, the software, and so on. The last process area is about low-level testing. Essentially, for a normal person, low-level testing refers to unit testing and integration testing. Typically, these low-level tests are performed by the developers themselves. So what the model says is, since it is being performed by the developers itself, the cost of uncovering the defects or the effort required to uncover the defects is dramatically less when compared to the cost or effort which has to be spent in the software testing phase. Also, it says that the overall communication and coordination effort comes down dramatically because in this case, the person who is injecting the error is same as the person who is uncovering the error. So you can imagine the situation where there is no need to communicate the test results formally and using a defect management system, tracking each of the defects to closure and then evaluating whether it has been closed properly. So all these activities are not required when using low-level testing techniques. Having said that, low-level testing has its own disadvantage. Just because the person who is performing the testing is the same as the person who has developed the software, so the intention of the person is always to prove that the software works fine, whereas the typical intention of a testing person has always to be to break the software and prove that the software does not work fine. So this conflict of interest comes in the way of overall effectiveness of the low-level testing. So that completes the 20 process areas of the TPI model. What I have done is I have gone through the summary of each of the process areas, and what could be done in another session or the following session is I can get you through the levels, that is level A or B or C of each process area. And again, we can get into the detailed possible study which is at the level of checkpoints. So each process area or key area has multiple levels and each level has multiple checkpoints. So the next level of study could be done at the level of checkpoints and the level of, say, A, B and C and D. So given an opportunity, I would love to do that. And with this, I invite questions from the audience. So before I invite questions, let me summarize what we have discussed in today's webinar. I will go to the content slide. Initially, we have seen the overview of the TPI model and we understood what is the test maturity matrix and how the model architecture is demonstrated using the maturity matrix. Then we saw how one can typically deploy TPI model in his organization, what are the various steps associated with this. And then we talked about the typical assessment methodology used, and also we say that there are 3 levels in TPI: controlled, efficient and optimizing, and how each one can be achieved. Then we got into the key areas and we saw the summary or the requirements of the key area at the topmost level. So this is what we have discussed today. Thank you all for listening and encouraging me, and any questions are welcome. Thank you everybody.